Hello, I'm Janine Banks, the General Manager of AWS Insights and Enterprise Tools. I work with customers all around the world, and there's a common theme in those conversations, and it's possibilities. It's the idea of being able to introduce new products, new business models, enter new markets, really transforming an organization in a time of so much change and volatility. Well, today I'm joined by Devendra Awastri from Deloitte, and together he and I will be talking about a new service, AWS Audit Manager. It's a service that helps you simplify how you manage risk and compliance in a volatile world. We will be talking about the service itself, but it's always more fun to get a demo, so we'll take you through to show you how easy the service is and how it works. Then we will be jumping into some of the partners and customers and how they've leveraged Audit Manager in their practices and their organizations. I'll pass it over to Devendra to talk more about how you apply Audit Manager in your audit preparation. And then lastly, we'll tell you how to get started. The three lines model is a model that is used by many organizations in order to organize around risk management for their organizations. Over this past summer, the International Institute of Auditors made some great improvements to the model that really emphasize the importance of collaboration throughout governance, risk, and compliance. That's so important because we know that there are so many new risks to contend with, from cybercrime, which is extremely costly, to all the various compliance and regulations that are evolving. The landscape is really complex. Now, that creates an interesting challenge for audit teams, compliance teams, those that are managing risk, because in a study that we reviewed by the IAA, we learned that only 14% of chief audit officers are providing assurance on risk from disruptive innovation. And that's really telling because as your organization is embracing the cloud and leveraging all the possible capabilities to innovate in your organization, for example, AWS has over 175 services, and at reInvent, we've been introducing new services every day. That means that disruptive innovation is something that is important to provide assurance. At the same time, you want to sprint ahead, making those changes in your organization, transforming so that you can address those new possibilities is so important to go fast. 70% of organizations will accelerate their digital technology adoption by 2022, according to IDC. So there's this contention between the manual processes of the traditional audit preparation and risk management and the speed of innovation, the speed of the cloud, and how it allows you to build and transform quickly. That's why we're introducing AWS Audit Manager. It continuously audits your AWS usage to simplify how you assess risk and compliance for your cloud workloads. You know that experience when you've prepared for your last audit. It's an all hands on deck experience. Some might even call it a fire drill. You have many different people, employees, consultants. You're going through reams of information, oftentimes on paper, and you have to pull data, digital information from different systems that aren't connected, whether it's log files to understand how systems are being used and user activities on those systems, or if it's screenshots and diagrams that you're collecting to demonstrate your system's architecture and the resilience. Well, now with Audit Manager, it makes that experience easier. First, it offers pre-built assessment frameworks. These are the mappings that you probably manage using spreadsheets today to identify the specific controls that you've implemented on your systems or need to implement versus the industry and regulatory requirements that are best practice for your organization or required. Audit Manager provides frameworks with all of these mappings already pre-built, so you can save time and provide everyone in your organization with a consistent baseline of information for managing your audits. A really unique capability in AWS Audit Manager is that it allows you to automate the process of collecting evidence from various control data sources. These are things like, for example, your controls, which are policies, procedures, activities that are being performed to manage risk. Well, automating the evidence of how individuals are accessing storage or whether your storage repositories are encrypted. Having information about your business continuity or even how your software licenses are deployed. Are those deployments in compliance with your software license agreements? Well, now you can automate the collection of that information, transform it into user-friendly auditor language, and then provide that in a package for your audit preparation. Back to the 3 lines model. Remember I said that the improvements that were made this year enhance collaboration. Well, Audit Manager is well aligned with that. It has functionality such as being able to delegate control sets for review to other team members, either in the business, like human resources or finance teams, or to technical experts in your IT departments and different departments such as networking or storage. You're able to review that information, validate the evidence meets the requirements that you have in various frameworks, and then decide which content will be aligned with the reports that you produce. And that gets me to the last point, audit-ready reports. With Audit Manager, you're able to select the evidence that you validated and click a button to generate an assessment report. And it's important that you're able to show the chain of custody of that evidence. And so Audit Manager performs evidence integrity checks so that you can have assurance that the information hasn't been tampered. Included with Audit Manager are a host of different supported assessment frameworks. Again, these are the packages of controls for various industry and regulatory standards. The pre-built assessment frameworks, such as for the Center for Internet Security, CIS, AWS Foundation's benchmark, or the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. Those frameworks, you can also customize it for your specific organization's governance or industry or other needs. So how does Audit Manager work? Well, as with any audit preparation, you start by defining the scope. What's included in the audit? Then you're able to review what are the specific services within AWS and the AWS accounts that you're using that satisfy that scope. Once you've decided the scope, now you're able to select from a set of pre-built assessment frameworks, as we just saw. And you choose that, you go to the next step where you're able to finalize who is your audit team, specifically the owners, those who will have access to the assessment that needs to be run. You select the information for where you're going to store your assessment reports, and that's it. You launch the assessment, and now Audit Manager will take over from there. It will continuously audit your AWS usage by going to the specific resources in your AWS services and accounts. These are things like your Amazon S3 buckets, your Amazon EC2 instances, or Amazon Virtual Private Cloud, VPC subnets, and more. And collecting the evidence is needed to satisfy your requirements. What is evidence? In Audit Manager, evidence comes from many different control sources, and you can customize that based on your needs. For example, in some cases, you want to be able to evaluate the configuration of a particular resource, say that bucket, an S3 bucket, and you want to determine that the encryption that is needed has been enforced on that bucket. And you want to be able to continuously check. So if any changes are made, you're flagged, and that status, that evaluation would fail. So that's an example of evidence that you can collect. An audit manager will continuously look to aggregate all in one place. Another example is manual information. There is evidence that's not automated that is tied to your business procedures, your policies, for example, training transcripts for security awareness training. And you want to bring that information together with the automated evidence and have it packaged and tracked in a consistent, repeatable methodology. So Audit Manager takes care of it for you. And now you can also delegate information, evidence that you want to be reviewed by your team, fostering that collaboration, sharing, for example, commenting and notifications. At the end, you want to be able to generate the assessment report from the assessment as it was running and take a snapshot that you can use for your audit preparation. Well, it's one thing to talk about it, it's another thing to see it. So let's jump right in to a demo and see how Audit Manager works.
Hi, my name is Kajal Deepak and I lead the Audit Manager service team. To get started with Audit Manager, let's go to the service homepage, where you can see the information about the service and get started. If you're a first-time user, you come to the Getting Started experience. But assuming you have been a user of Audit Manager already, you will come to the Assessments page, which show you the list of all of the running assessments. From here, you can create a new assessment. Let's say you want to create an assessment to test the compliance posture of your organization against PCI DSS, which is the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. You can go ahead and provide the details and specify where your reports are going to be stored, and then choose the pre-built framework that AWS Audit Manager provides for PCI DSS. There is a pre-built framework library that comes with the service, but customers can also create custom frameworks or customize a framework. For our purpose today, we will just go ahead and use the pre-built framework. You can also add tags to the assessment, which make it easier to search for assessment reports or data. Go ahead and specify the AWS accounts that are to be included in scope and the services from where the data should be fetched. Customers can also have co-owners for the assessment who will be able to modify the assessment detail. The list of the available users is onboarded through IAM service at the time of the onboarding of AWS Audit Manager to customers' management account. Once all of the assessment details are in place, you can go ahead and create the assessment. An assessment is the process of evidence collection against a specified compliance framework. Once you set up an assessment, they run continuously to collect evidence, but there might be some time before evidence actually populates. So for the purpose of the demo, we'll go ahead and review an existing assessment just to see what this data will look like if the assessment we just created were to run. Here is another assessment that was built using the same pre-built PCI DSS framework. The summary panel shows the total evidence that has been collected and any evidence that has been selected to be added to the assessment report. There are multiple tabs from which customers can see all of the details of the assessment. And they are able to see any evidence that has already been selected to be added to an assessment report. The controls which are included in the assessment are organized into control sets, which makes it easy to delegate a whole control set to a reviewer or a subject matter expert who may need to weigh in on data source mappings or any modifications required to the control. Customers can review the details of a control, which includes the control description, as well as the information on the data source mappings. Any remediation plans can also be spelled out. Customers can review the evidence that has been collected against that control. Inside the evidence folder, they will be able to see specific evidence that has been collected and will also be able to upload any manual evidence that they want. So let's go ahead and take a look at what evidence looks like. The evidence is a time-stamped snapshot of the data that Audit Manager fetches based on the mappings for the control. This data includes the attributes which have been collected and information on the AWS resources in scope. Customers can add any of this evidence to the assessment report that they want to generate. Once you're ready to generate an assessment report and happy with all of the selections which are included, you go ahead and specify parameters for the report. When this is done, you will be taken to the assessment report summary, from where you can select the report that you generated. And again, our report is still in progress, so we would have to select a different report to download. Once the customer presses the download button, they have the option to save a zip file. The zip file contains a PDF of the assessment report, as well as PDFs of the included evidence. And that concludes the entire cycle for the customer.
Oh, that was an awesome demo. We worked with a range of customers and partners to get input on exactly the kind of capabilities that you need to make Audit Manager a core component of your risk management and auditing process. For example, our customer Tango, they provide expense and spend management for telecommunications, IT organizations, and the cloud. They manage over $40 billion in expense for their customers. In working with us on Audit Manager, they told us that they run about 4 assessments per regime standard per month. And with Audit Manager, that will help them cut down the time it takes to prepare for an audit by 75%. That's awesome. That is equivalent to going from weeks of preparation down to just over a day. We've also worked with a range of partners to create specific assessment frameworks that catalog of pre-built frameworks that I mentioned earlier. For example, Allgress helped us and partnered on the FedRAMP assessment framework. And the Center for Internet Security, CIS, partnered with us on the CIS controls framework. I also want to now turn our attention to the partnership we have with Deloitte. AWS and Deloitte have been collaborating for many years to help our customers transform their organizations into digital, cloud-first businesses, and also assuring that they are in compliance and effectively managing risk. I would like to have Devendra Awasthi from Deloitte join us now and tell us about their experience collaborating on Audit Manager and how you can apply the new service in your audit preparation.
Thanks, Janine, and hope everybody is keeping healthy and safe. I'm excited about this opportunity to speak about cloud audit, and it's an important domain for everybody over here. So as we have learned that cloud is a big enabler for technology and business transformation, similarly, how we perform these audits and assessments also needs a transformation. That means how we design our audit, how we execute our audit, how we bring insight and value to our stakeholders need to be transformed. And we need to take a more integrated approach while performing these audits and integrate ourselves with the cloud journey of the organization. Typically, any particular audit has three major phases. One is planning and scoping, second is fieldwork, third is reporting. So in the planning and scoping, we identify what is the risk that we want to address, what is the scope of the environment, what exactly are we going to focus on, which compliance needs we need to satisfy as a part of this audit. So while doing that, we can definitely leverage the audit manager in defining which AWS account or resources are in scope. We can also leverage the framework and the control library that is provided by audit manager to create my own audit framework. That's how I will be integrating audit manager as a part of the planning phase. Moving on to the field work. The key activity that we perform during the field work is collecting evidences and analyzing evidences. There are a lot of things that can be automated, and that's where the audit manager plays a role. Audit manager can help us collect continuous evidences for certain areas. Obviously, it is not possible to automate compliance or automate audit evidence collection for each and every area, but definitely wherever it is possible, audit manager has that capability and we can leverage that as a part of our assessment. Then many times we have a hurdle that, okay, now my automated evidences are in one place and the other evidences are in different location. There are manual evidences, how I can integrate everything together. Within Audit Manager, you also have a feature to enable manual upload of evidences against the controls. That's an important aspect. Moving on to the third phase of the audit, that is the reporting phase, where we need to analyze the gaps, provide recommendations. In this particular phase, how we can leverage Audit Manager is we can identify what are the gaps. Audit Manager pulls evidences from different sources like Security Hub, CloudTrail logs, config, and it gives us an integrated view of if it has identified any gap within a particular environment or with a particular resource, there is a gap, it will help us identify that. So we can leverage that. And also, when it comes to providing recommendations, we have to go and leverage different sources to see what is the best practices, what are the different things that we should be considering while implementing a particular product or a resource or a particular environment. Audit Manager has that capability to bring all that together. You will have links, you will have recommendations in that particular product itself. So this is how we can integrate or leverage Audit Manager for all the three phases of cloud when we are performing a cloud assessments on an audit. Now, moving on to another important aspect is like, what are the key challenges and that we currently face as we are performing these audits, and how Audit Manager can help us address these challenges. One, the very first thing is about that buzzword around continuous compliance. We keep on hearing that continuous compliance is a thing, but when we want to achieve it, the auditors are not very much satisfied with, hey, you have point-in-time evidence. The continuous compliance also needs continuous evidence collection. That is where Audit Manager has that capability. I really like the way it has that feature where it collects evidences on an ongoing basis, which helps us achieve continuous compliance. Obviously, there are situations where evidences cannot be collected or manual evidences are required. So areas where it can be automated, we can achieve continuous compliance by leveraging Audit Manager. Second aspect of the challenge is single pane of glass, right? That is, any assessment requires us to review multiple products. Oh, we are using this third-party product for performing configuration assessments, or we are using this product for our OS configuration, and then we are using this product for our data related stuff. So you need to collect information from many different products and interact with many different people in order to perform an assessment, and then it's easy for you to miss out on certain aspects, right? You may miss out on collecting certain evidences that may be required. So here, the feature that I liked about Audit Manager is it has the capability to collect evidences from all these different sources and map it to the control that it belongs, right? Not only that, you can assign assessments, you can collaborate with different teams and get the reviews done in one single place. So everybody has the same level of visibility into your controls, what evidence was collected, and how we tested and how we identified the gap. So that single pane of glass is another important thing that makes our audits and assessments more efficient. The next challenge that I'm going to talk about is audit integrity. Okay, we have a lot of these sources, logs, and evidences that we keep on referencing, but how we make sure that integrity of the data, how I can map it back to the source, that is another aspect we as an auditors need to understand and make sure that whatever evidence we collect, the integrity of the evidence is maintained, and we can rely on that evidence. So, when we are leveraging Audit Manager, it has that capability to track or trace the evidence to its source and maintain that integrity throughout the process. So that it is more reliable evidence for the auditors, and we can understand that traceability and accordingly rely on the evidence that is collected as a part of the Audit Manager. Last aspect is about the scoping. As an auditors, we understand that any cloud environment will be have multiple products and services, and some of these products are platform as a service, some of them are software as a service or infrastructure as a service. Depending upon the various service models, the how we perform the audit is also different, right? For example, a particular control, if I'm relying on CSP for software as a service or a platform as a service, I need to independently audit if it is an infrastructure as a service. So that granularity, where I can pick up a particular product or resource and accordingly collect evidences for the areas that I am responsible for, is really important. Lastly, I would like to say that cloud is a shared responsibility, and so is security and compliance. Auditors and compliance professionals should not make any assumptions as we perform these audits and assessments, because assumptions leads to false sense of security. So when we talk about AWS Audit Manager, it's a great product. It's a great enabler for audits and assessments. We should understand what it can do and what it cannot do, and accordingly perform our assessment so that we don't fall in trap of false sense of security. With that message, I would like to end my session and hand over to Janine. Thanks, Janine. Over to you.
Well, let's get started, right? How do you get into Audit Manager? Well, first of all, Audit Manager is available in 10 regions. So you can get started immediately operating in Europe, US, Asia, pick a region, and then you choose an assessment framework. To make it easier for you, we have actually included a basic sample with 4 automated controls. It's called the AWS Audit Manager Sample Framework. So if you choose that framework, you can go through very easily to test drive the service, see how it works, and start planning how you leverage Audit Manager in your next audit preparation. I want to thank you for joining me today for the introduction of AWS Audit Manager. We're all really excited in AWS about how this service can help you simplify the way that you assess risk and compliance and ultimately bridge that gap between traditional audit preparation and the need to move fast for digital innovation in the cloud. Thank you.